author Sidney Kirkpatrick.
Hollywood's funniest was literally in tears, and what they were crying about was the tragedy that was Mabel Normand, a brilliant, a wonderful pioneer film actress, a woman who literally lit up the screen, was torn up by a series of tragedies, one after the other, and it literally destroyed her.
Mabel's story begins on November 9th, 1892, not 1895 as her gravestone suggested. Mabel Ethel Reed Normand was born on Staten Island in New York. The youngest of Claude and Mary Normand's kids, Mabel was a wild child with an adventurous spirit. William Sherman is the author of Mabel Normand, a source book to her life and films.
She was independent-minded and courageous and a bit reckless and fun and easygoing and big-hearted. She had no time for phoniness and timidity.
She was also a genuine natural-born athlete. So when she was in Staten Island, she was a champion swimmer. Her parents said that she swam to Bayonne and back daily.
In 2008, Mabel was offered a whopping 50 cents an hour to model dress patterns for a Delineator magazine.
It's not so surprising that she went into modeling. She posed for like Charles Dana Gibson, who's well known for his Gibson girl. She did advertisements for hats, combs, shoes, and all kinds of things.
So Mabel, who was not considered a bathing beauty, was doing these kinds of risque, as they say in those days, kind of comedies, showing her sexuality in some way.
She was known to have done a lot of stunts, riding horses and going up in hot air balloons, being tied to the railroad track, swimming across lakes and being dragged through the mud on a rope, all kinds of things.
In the spring of 1913, Mabel met fellow comedian Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. Over the next 3 years, the duo starred in 26 films together.
For example, in Mabel's Simple Life, they had this natural sort of comedic sense. So these different elements combined give those films this certain special charm and fun, which is quite unique.
Mabel also had fun behind the camera at Mack Sennett's Keystone Studios.
During the time that when Mabel said, you know, you're going to let me direct, Mack gave her a little. And particularly with this newcomer, this little creepy guy off the stage who came to be known as Charlie Chaplin.
And according to Chaplin himself in his autobiography, there was a point where he as much fell in love with Mabel, but she did not return his affection in that way.
And while Chaplin was lusting for Mabel, Mabel's heart still belonged to Sennett. Composer and lyricist Jerry Herman wrote the 1974 Broadway musical, Mack and Mabel.
I wrote a song called I Won't Send Roses, which is my favorite song from Mack and Mabel. And the last line of the song is, I won't send roses, and roses suit you so. That here's a man who doesn't know how to say what he would like to say to her. And therefore, she remains a frustrated lover all their lives together. She had the affection from thousands of fans, but never from the one man that she truly loved.
Norman
did have a severe drug problem. She's hollow, thin, sallow. Her eyes look drugged. A gold one wanted to get rid of her, in effect. Mack wanted her back, but at this point, she was being rescued by a third man, William Desmond Taylor, who got her into a drug clinic in the East and saved her life that way. Although he would help ruin it later, inadvertently, at that moment, he saved her from the drug.
In February 1922, one evening, Mabel was visiting Taylor. After being there for about an hour, Taylor escorted Mabel out to her car, and that was the last she saw of Taylor, because the next morning he was found shot, lying in a pool of blood at his bungalow.
And the sad irony, the sad truth of the matter was, you know, Mabel Normand was being helped by William Desmond Taylor. William Desmond Taylor was helping Mabel Normand learn to read. He was a mentor. He was her guide. He was an anchor in her life.
After being thoroughly interrogated by police, Mabel Normand was not charged with Taylor's murder. The crime was never solved.
But just the mystery behind it and the scandal behind it, you know, it caught a lot of undesirable publicity and a lot of people prying and questions about her character.
She lost her audiences very quickly. She lost some of that magic that she had, you know, and very soon she became involved in a second scandal and another shooting, and that was the, you know, that was the death knell.
On New Year's Day, 1924, Mabel, along with actress Edna Purviance and millionaire playboy Cortlandt Dines, spent the afternoon getting drunk. Mabel's chauffeur had been instructed by Mabel to take her home if she got too tipsy.
The chauffeur was trying to protect Mabel, and Mabel didn't want to go home, which you can see Mabel saying, "Oh no, I'm not going home, the party has just begun."
There was at a certain point this altercation between Dines and the chauffeur. Dines perhaps said something insulting about Mabel. The chauffeur, very defensive and protective of her, took offense at this, and he was carrying with him a pistol, and he shot Dines.
The chauffeur claimed he fired the gun at Cortlandt Dines in self-defense.
He wasn't killed, but again, this certainly hit the headlines, and Mabel was there. They were all hauled down to the police station. And then it turns out that the chauffeur was an ex-convict who had changed his name.
Mabel's ex-con chauffeur Horace Greer was acquitted of all charges, but the gun used in the shooting belonged to, guess who? Mabel Normand. Talk about starting the new year off with a bang. Once again, Mabel made the front page. It wasn't pretty. In 1925, 32-year-old Mabel took off for New York to star in a Broadway musical called The Little Mouse.
It did not go over very well, essentially because it was not a very good play. Mabel's voice didn't carry. It was just not a good time for this kind of career change, and she had saddled with so much else. So it was really not that surprising it didn't work out.
In the spring of 1926, 33-year-old Mabel returned to Hollywood. Movie producer and Our Gang creator Hal Roach reluctantly offered the out-of-work comedienne a 3-year film contract.
But it was too little, too late. The damage had been done. Part of it was her own character, her being so independent-minded, flamboyant, reckless in a way. But there was, people were jealous. She was powerful. And these ingredients together, just made her life and career impossible, ultimately.
Mabel drew her last breath on February 23, 1930. At the age of 38, the gifted comedienne was finally able to rest in peace.
It was like that candle in the wind, and it got blown out. You go back and you look at Mabel's films, and there was a classic talent. I mean, a real, genuine brilliance, to her work, and it stands up over time. It's as fresh and interesting and lively today, as it was back in the 20s.
Mabel was quite different in that she was this comical person, but she was quite the adorable, cute gal, but with this sort of sprite-like mischief about her.
Mabel was really one of the first comedic actresses to explore the playfulness of women. In other words, women not being shut away, but more women being more aggressive, outgoing, on their own. This was her thing. And again, she was playing herself. She was a playful, warm person, but she was reckless in some ways and took chances in a way you couldn't really separate the two.